Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 4 o'clock. I call the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Committee meeting to order. First, may I have a motion for the minutes? Move
adoption.
Second. Call a question. Those in favor, opposed, motion carry. Next meeting is going to be May 24th, 4 o'clock, same place. Is there any addition or deletion from the agenda? Seeing none, so we go with the agenda. First of all, we would have the delegation. So may I have Dean, President of the Richmond Delta Youth Orchestra, and Gordon, President of the Richmond Community Concert Band, to come up. Oh,
Yeah, we've got a chair. I think we're good.
yeah, thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes. Introduce yourself. And you can
Thank you
start.
very much, Councillor. I would just like to introduce myself. I'm Linda Barnes, 4551 Gary Street, and I'm representing the Richmond Arts Coalition here in Richmond, and to my right is...
My name is Dean Markell, President of the Richmond Delta Youth Orchestra, 201 Cardiff Way in Port Moody.
And I'm Gordon Smith, President of the Richmond Community Concert Band, and I live at 3811 Francis Road here in Richmond.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Au and committee, for hearing our submission today. You're well aware, I think, of the Arts Coalition and its mandate to promote the arts here in Richmond and advocate for space and the needs of artists. And so that's our continuing mandate today. And I'd like to speak to you specifically about the overdue need for new and appropriate purpose-built music and performing centers in Richmond. And so I'm going to turn to Gordon.
Okay. I'll try and be quick because we apparently have a time limit. We wanted to bring this matter to the attention of your committee and to the mayor and city councillors. Our 2 musical arts groups, who have been in existence for 50 years each, will become homeless with no administration, rehearsal, and storage space after June 30th, 2023. On March 17th, we received an eviction notice from Brighouse United Church, along with all its other 26 tenants, as the congregation is dissolving and property is for sale and possible redevelopment. As we explore Plan B space options in the city of Richmond, we find no existing spaces are able to accommodate the sound, size, and time of day availability, as well as the storage needs of musical arts organizations. Music noise concerns necessitate purpose-built spaces. Most multi-purpose spaces in Richmond are not able to accommodate sound containment and acoustic safety for the musicians. The closing of the church provides evidence of reduced availability or access in Richmond to musical arts spaces. The Brighouse closure is a threat not only to the Richmond Delta Youth Orchestra and the Richmond Community Concert Band, but to the numerous community groups who utilize this important community space. It has functioned as both a rehearsal and meeting space for these groups, but it has also supported the storage needs of our instrumental performing ensembles, which require percussion instruments, pianos, music stands, and more to create their art. Finding an alternative venue to provide both an adequate rehearsal space and accessible equipment storage is proving to be a considerable challenge. I should add that the Richmond Band has been looking for quite a while. We can find the space, but not the storage.
Thanks, Gordon. First of all, we want to express our appreciation for the creation of a solid foundation for art and culture from the 2019 Richmond Arts Strategy, as it states findings that align to our organization's missions and purpose. It's evident from this document that the City of Richmond has a clear and documented understanding that the arts are a key pillar in building a thriving community. Indeed, the arts make us happier, healthier, better students, better scientists. They help us recover from injury. They help us enjoy our later years, and so much more. Though the City of Richmond is making headway with its art strategy, with it ending in 2024, it's imperative that we bring attention to all today the emerging need to prioritize strategic direction number 5, to activate public spaces through and for the arts. We highlight the need for the City of Richmond to act on what was already addressed in the art strategy, to plan for future arts facilities to address the demand for arts education and program space, to actively work with developers to create space for music and performing arts and gathering spaces, particularly medium-sized spaces for 150 to 300 people. To continue to have a strong, vibrant, and growing musical and performing arts community in the City of Richmond, we need a deeper capital investment to plan and provide appropriate-sized and purpose-built rehearsal and performance venues, such as many other youth orchestras enjoy in their cities.
So thank you again, and to wrap up, I would just like to state that what we're really asking this committee today is a referral to city staff. And what we would like included in that is interim support with these immediate and emergent musical art space needs. Staff has been working with the two groups that are here today, but we would like to have them continue to work because they need space as of June 30th. But we would like also to launch an external arts needs assessment and a long-term vision to build purpose-built space for music and performing arts in Richmond. And I'd just like to say that in our audience today, we have several people who have come out to support this. It's just a token people who come out. If you could just raise your hands. People from both orchestras as well as the Richmond Arts Coalition. So thanks very much, Councillor Al. We certainly would be available for questions.
So thank you for coming, and thank you for your presentation. I think your presentation highlights some of the gaps that we have in the city in terms of space and facility for this kind of performances. So do we have any questions? Bill?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for coming. It's nice to see a member of the committee, Councillor Band here, and also the youth orchestra people. So thank you for coming. I have no problem referring this to staff whatsoever, and I think that's what we should be doing. But I'd like to ask you, first of all, you answered one of my questions with so many people. What kind of interim, I got about 4 or 5 questions, if I may. What kind of interim support are you looking for now? And when are you getting, you're leaving on March the?
June 30th.
June 30th. So what are you looking for interim? You said interim support. A space?
We are looking, in the interim, we're looking for a place where we can store our musical equipment, so space. In the interim, if there's possible support for rehearsal spaces as we move into the fall season. In the summer, we're off, but we're really looking at that June 30th deadline of being out of break house.
All right, given that, and I think many of you know, everybody's looking for space, for meeting space, nonprofits, et cetera, the visual arts. We've had 4 school trustees on here, and I wonder if part of that referral could be to look at some of the schools that are not as active as others, whether that be acceptable on the interim for a place to practice, let's say September the 1st, if there was nothing else, would that be something?
Councillor McNulty, can I sort of address that? Richmond Community Band does not rehearse in the month of July. We do concerts in seniors' homes here in Richmond on our normal rehearsal night. August is our month off, so we need the facility for September. One of our backup plans is the band room at Richmond High. Okay. There are problems with secondary schools. It's closed at spring break. What do you call it? Night school tends to affect parking. The size of the room can be an issue. However, it will be an interim thing for us. We've arranged with the teacher there to use their percussion. It means that we have to then pay for a second storage unit. We already have one to store all our band music. We have to get a second one to store our timpani, drum set, and any other percussion, and we will use theirs. It's not ideal, but it will be an interim thing.
No, I appreciate that comment, and I think, like you and as a taxpayer, I think we've got to look to what facilities are out there now. And as a former educator, I can tell you how schools operate in that, and there could be more flexibility. And like I said, we have 4 school trustees that, Ron, I'm sure they will have ideas of how to do it, but that's just between you and I. I make that comment because the interim is going, I totally agree with you. We need a performing arts needs assessment. We've never done it. We've thought we should have done it many years ago. And I'm with you on that. And the purpose built that's going to be down the road, no matter what we do, is 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. No matter whether we have a number of major developments coming on that could be, but they need to be moved along quickly, and there may be some opportunities there. But obviously, no promises on it, and I appreciate the fact that you've come forward. So I will be supporting you in your referral, but more importantly, I want to see you be able to do something on September the 1st, or whatever it is, October, whatever decide you do, and you're not standing out in Brighouse Park there with your trombones or whatever, looking to do anything. And I don't mean to be facetious. We maybe, I don't know where we're going to find interim support for you. That's why I had it. So anyhow, I'll be supporting it, and I'll be more than happy to move a referral.
Sure. Andy?
Councillor Au, if I could, through the chair, sorry, just further address Councillor McNulty's question about schools, and certainly as Gordon indicated that, you know, they're high on their radar. One of the issues, as you well know, is schools don't have space for storage, and that's one of the larger issues that they've got. The performing is one thing, the space storage is another big issue. But thank you for that.
Yeah, well, anyhow, part of the referral, I would add to at least consult and communicate with the school board. Okay,
I'm wondering how large the Richmond Delta Youth Orchestra is, because they may not fit into one of our high school band rooms. Numbers? Your
I think
biggest
the-
group?
The largest group is about 50 members.
It
So
should work.
it's
It should
possible
work,
unless
yeah.
it was a combined thing.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Good.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Andy?
Just, thanks, and through the chair. Well, thanks for coming and presenting to us today. Actually, Councillor McNulty asked all my questions and covered it off nicely, and I agree with him. So I will be supporting the referral as well. Just on the storage, and you just mentioned it though, with the schools. So if there's an opportunity at Richmond High, I know space is limited, but is temporary storage, even in terms of, you know, heated and ventilated and perhaps even air-conditioned temporary storage facilities that could be put on site, would that be useful if there's not enough in the school?
It would have to be heated and rodent and insect proof. We actually discussed that. Could we use a church, a sanctuary, and put a building outside? I think we run into insurance issues and so on. But Richmond Community Band, as I said, already has a heated storage unit at Advanced Storage. It's not big enough to hold everything. They don't have any of the larger ones available yet, but we can take a second smaller one. And of course, it means more money to pay for the storage, but
Sure.
basically, we already have a storage unit that we pay for.
Okay, well,
And for the youth orchestra, the important thing for us is that if it's the music library and it's the instruments, so that it needs to be accessible storage as we rehearse.
right,
Yeah.
yes,
So
that
that's
makes
the one,
sense.
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. and,
If I could just make a brief comment about the North Delta Fine Arts Center that was built. They asked for input from various other groups, and the Delta Concert Band was one of the ones that gave input, and they made it really clear that what they needed was storage. It was going to become their permanent rehearsal space and home. And by the time it was finished, and the architects and everyone else, and the accountants got through with it, they were told, well, we're sorry, there's no storage. And they can't use it. They use it for concerts where they will bring their equipment in for one concert. But you can't be wheeling timpani and drum sets and keyboards and all those things in on a weekly basis. You've got to store them somewhere, load them in a truck, bring them over. We need to have a facility where we can open a door, wheel the stuff out. At Brighouse, our timpani are up on the stage. We go, we lift them down to the floor, and they're right there for us. Same with the drum set.
Sure, that all makes sense, and
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing the referral. And I think the immediate crisis starts a little bit before June 30th, so the temporary solution, I think, will
Yeah.
be step one, right? Thank you.
Richmond Band is already planning to have one rehearsal in June, just to make sure the space will work for us. May or June, I'm sorry, I think it's May.
Good, thank you.
Laura?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the comments from the other councillors, and I also absolutely support a referral, and thank you for presenting, and thanks for everybody for coming out to support. Sorry, just on that last comment you made about the temporary rehearsal space. You already have a temporary rehearsal space in May?
For the fall, Richmond High will
Richmond High.
allow us to use their space.
But no storage, yeah, okay.
Right, well, we will be able to use their equipment
Oh, okay.
in the Richmond High Band Room.
Yeah.
And we will put our own into storage at our expense.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just want to know, I don't know the details of, the church closing. I do know that I have seen performances there. I saw a community play about people experiencing homelessness there a couple of years ago, and it's sort of right in the heart of Richmond off Bennett there, where people from Stories were involved in doing theater there, and it's a really essential location, and I remember at the time they were actually fundraising for roof repairs that were going to be around $40,000. I think that's what it was, or maybe it was $8,000. Anyway, I'm not great at remembering numbers for some reason, even though I'm an accountant. It was somewhere in there. Anyway, so I think that the closing kind of came as a shock. I'm sure you have, but I just have to ask, have you or staff, or the city staff, because you said you were getting some support from staff internally, have you communicated with the church about the possibility of staying there while the property is for sale if you took care of the maintenance, like locking and opening the doors and having, if there could be some sort of an agreement?
I think that is something we've discussed. I think the state of the sale, we haven't been able to get any information from the church yet about potential buyers, but that's certainly something we're exploring and hoping to pursue if it becomes a possibility.
Yeah, because that would be good. I mean, it could be for sale for the next 2 years for all we know.
And my understanding is that there's, I think, about 26 community groups that use that space.
Yeah,
So
it's a really
massive.
important space. And so if all those groups don't have the money needed to perhaps just deal with basic maintenance, because maybe the church just, it's easier if we just close it, and so then we don't have to deal with anything, but perhaps staff, part of the referral staff could help coordinate with Richmond United, with that church to see about taking over our maintenance internally, so all these groups can continue using it and something like that. The other question I have is, what was it? Sorry. Oh, a question for staff, I guess, but maybe that would come later in the referral. But, yeah, maybe that'll come
Yeah, we can
after
do that
referral.
later.
Yeah, and then regarding schools, there's, Sea Island School isn't being used. They use it for community things, people rent it. So perhaps that has a big enough space to store things if the church thing didn't work out. Thank you again for coming.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Michael?
Thank you, through the chair, delegates. Thanks. All connected with schools and music. McNair, I can't miss a performance by their orchestra. And I'm aware of the space challenges when outside groups need to disassemble this alarm or have a cleaner come in after they're done, and all these extra doors and stuff you need keys for. Yeah, not the easiest way to go about it. A couple questions for you. In your collective call to action here, your referral, is it? Can I interpret it as indoor and outdoor venue space?
I think,
Indoor, I think. Yeah.
yes, I think that at this point is what we're looking at is indoor space. you know, particularly around storage and performing. Our weather's just not conducive to large orchestras outside on a regular basis.
Sure thing. Yeah, and I know this coming Monday is Music Monday, and Burnett is planning to perform outdoors if they can. And I also have heard from others in the community that are interested in more like amphitheater outdoor space with a cover. As you may have been aware, the Aberdeen Neighborhood Park is a new facility that has a kind of a cover area, but maybe not ideal if it's raining in from the side with wind and all that. Any thoughts on the new art annex? I know the old senior center there had the gymnasium and that facility space. Any comments on that?
We've been hoping for space, rehearsal space in that facility for many, many years. That's been part of the discussion, as well as previous to that was discussion of a redevelopment of BUC with community space. I think the reality that we're understanding from staff is that the redevelopment in the senior center has no accommodation for noise mitigation or acoustic treatment. So there's a worry about sound bleed. And so the big concern for musicians and musician safety is that we need a space so the sound dissipates so it doesn't damage our ears. And we need sound containment so it doesn't disturb others. Hearing damage is cumulative, so the longer you're in a space with loud noise, it builds up over time, and that's how the damage. So acoustic safety is a really important consideration for our youth and community.
And if I could just add to that through the chair to Councillor Wolf is, that's why we're asking for purpose-built space for exactly those kinds of concerns. And so some of the space, I know that only these two groups, as was said, there's 26 in total that are being displaced by this church alone. So the need is there, and you know, certainly I know that they're beating the bushes, looking for whatever is available, but you know, safety obviously, not only for adults, but when you're talking young people is a paramount. So purpose-built space is really the key, and as has been said, I think the understanding is, I mean, that's not going to happen by June 30th of 2023, let alone 2024. But that is the long-term, hopefully not too long-term, goal is to have that purpose-built space.
And if I could come back to the annex, we have been in close contact with Kamil Chaichian. And in the end, he kept consulting us saying, what are your needs? How can we make this work for you? And in the end, he said, well, we have one room that seats 30. It's not big enough. We have another one that's big enough, but we're really worried about sound containment and sound bleed. And the third option was the little theater at the Cultural Center. Well, we've played in that theater, and the acoustics are so dreadful. You cannot hear yourself think when a band like the Richmond Band is playing. It would need some major acoustic treatment to make it suitable for groups like ours. And it still doesn't address the storage. And the city facilities shut down at 9 p.m. Our band rehearses past that. The one advantage to the high schools is we have found out that the custodian's there till 11 p.m. So we've got time there. So I hope that adds more background.
Thanks. I just have one follow-up. I was going to list a couple sites for your consideration if you haven't already, and you've just mentioned one, the Performance Hall at the Cultural Center. I know it's not there anymore, but the Minoru Aquatic pool that got taken down, I always thought that would have been a great venue. It had some open concept to it. Could have had some improvements and storage space and everything. Anyhow, we didn't win that battle. What about if Phoenix Netloft or Netloft, could that potentially be a site purpose-built to work?
I think the acoustics would be an issue there too. Yeah.
Okay, I've only heard folk.
And the net loft, I think in the winter would be drafty and cold as well. Not a pleasant space to rehearse.
I don't know.
Yeah, those are all my questions. I have a couple more for staff.
Okay, good. Carol?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, Councillor Wolf took the words out of my mouth. The first thing I thought of was the Aquatic Center with that big A-frame. why did we pay millions of dollars to tear it down? I did not. Don't get me started. Okay, so looking at alternatives, given that that's gone now, have you checked into any of the institutions on the Highway to Heaven? Because there's some really big temples and churches along there that have large spaces that they wouldn't be using on a Tuesday night type of thing. Have you checked into any of them?
Well, I'm not sure if our committee has checked into those, but we've certainly looked into a lot, like South Arm United and numerous churches around the community, and they all come back to the same issue, the storage. And when you mention the A-frame, I keep looking at that big expanse of lawn, thinking cultural center with a walkway over to the annex. You know, you'd have potters and weavers and so on in the one, and the cultural things in the other. What a perfect location that would be. And of course, we are looking long-term if we're getting purpose-built.
Yeah, okay. We could talk all night about that one.
Yeah.
I was pulling my hairs out, just crazy. Okay, out of curiosity, how many Richmond residents are there between these two groups?
The Richmond Delta Youth Orchestra, we moved to Richmond in the early 2000s as a realization that most of our membership is in the city of Richmond. So approximately 60% of our students are residents of the city of Richmond, about 20% from South Vancouver. So Richmond really is our home. We moved here as a decision that Richmond is where we wanted to be home and make our future. We have students from all the surrounding communities, like my daughter is the farthest out from Port Moody, but we're really based in Richmond, and this is where we want to be, and this is where we want to grow.
And how many approximately would that be? How many approximately?
60%?
Yeah.
60% of approximately 200, so it's about 120.
Okay, perfect. And what about the other group?
We're a much smaller group. Our full group is about 45, and I would say around 30 are actual Richmond residents.
Okay.
And the others, some come from Vancouver, some from Delta, some from Surrey.
Okay, perfect. And, excuse me, the Gateway Theatre performance facility, is there any chance you can perform and practice there?
We do some events at Gateway. The big issue there is availability of space. It's booked for many musicals and theater groups and dance groups. So the consistent available, Richmond Delta Youth Orchestra rehearses Saturdays. So to find consistent bookable space on a Saturday is tough because that's when many, many other groups have pre-booked spaces. And if there's a show, then you get bumped. So that's a challenge. Certainly it's a possibility for one-offs, but it's the consistent, regular, dedicated space that we're really looking forward in the long term.
Well, given that Saturdays are the prime time for everything, in the city, is there any chance you could be more flexible on that?
Something we can look at. I think in terms of our conductors and students, certainly we'll look at all options. But
That's good. It's always good to be flexible. I'm also thinking about YVR's got some really large buildings out there, and it just might be worth checking that out as well. What else? Phoenix Nest Loft, you said was too cold. I think the suggestion of Sea Island School is an excellent one. It has, I think, 16 students in it, so I'm sure they could find some room for you. And being,
closed.
sorry?
It's closed.
Yeah, but they could maybe get flexible there. You never know. Regarding storage, as long as it's heated and it's rodent resistant, it could be a container of type, couldn't it? Like something that is mobile? Because you're already using a mobile one, I believe, at Richmond High right now?
No, our storage is at number 5 Road, Advanced Storage. It's a commercial storage facility.
Okay.
And that's just right now for our band music. Yes, an outside storage thing would work. For example, if we were using a church sanctuary and we had a facility parked outside, we could roll the things inside. It would be a little frustrating in the rain, as you know, but that would be doable as long as it were heated and rodent-proof.
Okay, and that's all my questions. So when this comes to council, I will be supporting the referral. Thank you.
Yeah, well, if I may. So it sounds like to me that it's not any kind of space, right? There's certain requirements that you have to meet. So a big box warehouse might not meet your needs.
I think that would be a temporary solution in the interim. But I'm envisioning an arts center that would have a space big enough for our groups, sound insulation, a choral room, a dance studio, and a theater studio, and perhaps those choral rooms and so on would have lower ceilings. There could be additional practice rooms upstairs, and it would be a good facility for things like the Richmond Community Music School to make a home. They could have an upper floor or something with practice studios and teaching studios. I see it as being a real hub for the arts, and quite multi-purpose if you think choir, band, orchestra, theater, and dance, you know, yeah.
Yes, okay. Are you paying rent right now?
Are we paying rent?
Rent.
Yes, we are, to Brig House. And I want to point out that after the pandemic, they wanted to jack our rent more than 100%. And I was quite taken aback. I called them up and I said, look, we've been with you for years. So it ended up going up more like 30%, but it did go up. And it was actually a very good deal because Brig House, Stu Oppenheimer had been the minister there, and his wife was a music teacher, and his children studied music, so he gave arts groups a very good deal. But as I say, he's retired, and the current staff want to charge more commercial prices, which are quite a bit higher. We were looking at a jump from about $70 a rehearsal to $150 a rehearsal. So more than double. And when you multiply 150 a rehearsal times 4 in a month, times 10 months, it's a big chunk of our budget.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I asked that question because I want to make sure that you're not asking for free space. Yeah, good. And
Also pays rental at all of our venues.
right. Okay, my last question is, have you go public about your needs? Like, have you spoken to the media so that people in the community knows about your need and they may come forward with offers? Have you gone that route?
That is, after today's meeting, that is our next step.
That's the next.
It's on the list.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I hope the Richmond News can make a story about. Okay.
I'll move the referral.
So move.
Well, no, I want to word it properly. I'd like to refer to staff the delegation's requests for investigations of items 1, 2, and 3, and I won't read them out. And also to consult with the Vancouver School Board, the Richmond School Board for any potential space.
Okay. Second? Okay. Further discussion, or do you have questions for staff? Michael?
Thank you. Just one question to staff.
So thank you. Yeah, you can be excused.
And we appreciate the extra time. That was the longest 5 minutes.
No problem.
Thanks. My question I was going to ask at manager's report, but I think it's kind of more timely here. We were waiting on in our referral package, the sports facility needs, and I'm just curious when that's coming, because that might also have potential space for what we've just been talking about. So when the new facility that the city builds, maybe there could be some purpose-built components to it.
The sports facility needs assessment that's currently underway is expected to come forth to committee in third quarter.
Oh, third quarter, okay. Okay, that'll be all then. Oh, sorry, one last question. Could staff consider this referral that's on the floor to also consider needs assessment for outdoor space? Could that be done in with this, or would that need a separate line item?
Could be either or.
If I may, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, perhaps you could clarify a bit more. I am concerned about, we're really working with Richmond Sports Council on the work that they had previously done to analyze that, to identify gaps related to sport and specifically amenities. So I would hesitate to draw away from that, the importance of that work, not to say that there is another important work, and we'd be happy to do that.
For sure. So to clarify then, things like space like amphitheater or more covered space like the Aberdeen Neighborhood Park has, like, do we have enough, or is there still requests for more outdoor venue space that has cover, which can simply be on the side of a new gymnasium, just build
Sure.
it out cover.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm not aware of specific requests for outdoor amphitheater space. We could certainly consider that perhaps within this referral and consider it as an option or a,
Great.
yeah,
So
I
don't
think
it
an
needs to
option
be-
within that, but I'm not aware of particular requests.
Perfect, thanks.
Laura?
Through the chair to staff, just so, on item 1 of this referral, it says interim support with these immediate and emerging musical arts space needs. So I just want to put it out there that, to me, the interim support would include liaising with the Richmond United Church to see about taking over rental of that space for now while it's for sale and helping the groups to be able to stay there. So it's not really a question, it's just a comment. And then for number 3, for the long-term vision to build, so number 3 on the referrals, long-term vision to build purpose-built space for music and performing art in Richmond. And this would possibly have a crossover to planning staff and not just park staff, in that perhaps, when we have a new redevelopment, we'll ask a developer to have to contribute for a new SkyTrain station kind of thing. So perhaps this property, a requirement of rezoning could be that they create a purpose-built rental, purpose-built performance space at that site as their community amenity. So we should look at the logistics of that kind of thing. Whether it be even something that would be like a covenant that could possibly be registered while the sale's taking place so that the new owners know what's coming. Just to be proactive about it.
Okay. So any further discussion? So call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Could I just make another?
Sure.
Could staff take it under advisement? The delegation has said there's other groups. I think it would be in our best interest to know what the nature of those groups are that are being displaced, because otherwise I believe we're going to hear from 25 of them very shortly for space. So we should be just a phone call or whatever to find out, and maybe give us a memo, who's there, et cetera. Not that I'm putting them forward at this time, but we'd like to know the natures of them. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving forward, item number 2, Museum and Heritage Service Year in Review 2022. Rebecca, anything to add to the report?
Good afternoon. I have nothing further to add to the report, but I do have a short video presentation with some highlights from last year.
Very good. We like videos.
Roll it.
2022 was a busy year for museum and heritage services in Richmond, with over 275,000 individuals participating in a heritage activity. Sites were fully reopened and people gathered in person again for many heritage programs and events. These special experiences bring a great value to the community in a variety of ways. Heritage places foster local pride by providing spaces of cultural memory and increasing historical understanding. In 2022, this was achieved in the guided tours introduced at Britannia Shipyards, enhancing visitors' understanding of Richmond's rich and diverse history, which continues to shape our local community. This value was also shared in the take-home cultural activity kits developed by the Richmond Museum. These kits help build participants' understanding of the cultural practices and celebrations in our communities. At the Steveston Museum, renovations helped create a new space for local artists to display their work in the Steveston Historical Society's year-round pop-up art show. Heritage activities increase residents' well-being, offering opportunities for social interaction and shared experiences. The Doors Open Richmond event is a great example of this, offering free opportunities to explore Richmond's unique heritage, arts, and cultural sites. A highlight in 2022 was the return of the popular Faith Bus Tour, where participants visited 3 faith-based organizations along No. 5 Road. The Richmond Maritime Festival also brought people together to celebrate local maritime heritage through the performances of local artists and the heritage boat displays. In 2022, the focus was on family, with many opportunities for kids to connect with local heritage through puppet shows and maritime-themed crafts and activities. The Gulf of Georgia Cannery National Historic Site produced the Welcoming the Sun event, celebrating Indigenous culture, history, and knowledge. This event brought together diverse audiences of all ages to learn about experience and engage with our local Indigenous community. Learning about history and heritage creates informed and engaged citizens. Today, people from around the world can learn about Richmond's history and heritage from their own home. One example of exciting online content is the Richmond Museum's website. Launched in 2022, this unique site offers compelling new experiences such as exhibits, walking tours, and a theater filled with Richmond-specific documentary videos. Field trips remain a staple for heritage places with more than 8,500 students participating in 2022. The Richmond Olympic Experience expanded its field trip programs through partnerships with the Richmond Oval Kids Camps and the BC Wheelchair Basketball Society. Preserving and caring for heritage objects and stories reduces isolation among seniors by valuing their past and offering opportunities to share it with others. The Richmond Archives preserves and protects over 1 kilometer of historical records. These records are cared for and shared with the public with help from community volunteers. In 2022, the Archives acquired 41 new items and had 14 volunteers working regularly on different projects. In 2022, the City of Richmond added 380 new objects to its collection of artifacts with historical, social, and/or cultural significance to the community of Richmond. One highlight was the donation of 2 Cantonese opera costumes from a Richmond performer who showed staff how to correctly wear them in preparation for the Arts Live Here exhibit. Participating in heritage stewardship activities increases individuals' sense of belonging to a community. In 2022, over 1,170 individuals supported heritage activities in Richmond. Many of these people are part of one of the 8 community groups that support Richmond heritage places and events. These groups play an essential role providing vision and resources to help preserve and present our history and heritage. Volunteers are also at the heart of heritage work. In 2022, volunteers contributed over 16,000 hours to support the delivery of programs and events, champion the conservation of Richmond heritage places and objects, and care for heritage sites. The exceptional heritage work of community members is celebrated through the annual Richmond Heritage Awards, organized by the Richmond Heritage Commission. Awards recognize individuals and organizations for their dedication to Richmond's historic places, public history, and heritage interpretation. In 2022, 5 awards were given for projects supporting the presentation and preservation of Richmond's heritage.
Good, thank you. Excellent. Okay, Michael?
Thank you. Through the chair, just 2 questions. First off, in the report, it mentions that 10 heritage sites were lost. Could you just speak to, was there a commonality amongst how the 10 sites fell off the list, which was related to this memo that we got?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I believe what you're referring to is something that was noted in a prior memo about the heritage inventory update, and I will defer to my director, Marie Fenwick, who's the author of that memo.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, those sites were lost due to demolition.
Okay. So they're all privately owned?
There was 8 privately owned sites. One was city-owned at Terra Nova, and one was a school district.
Okay. Then just a follow-up on that. So if it is a site that's not city-owned, is there any way that the city is flagged before demolition so we can ask for reconsideration or moving the structure?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Wolf, so that with the updated inventory, all of those sites are now flagged for the planning staff. We do have planning staff here if you had more specific questions about the mechanisms for that.
Have that confirmed. My second question goes to somewhere else in the report. Closed pages here. Is the Indigenous belongings that were in the video and in the report. And it mentions on page 10 in your report, but page 35, I think, in the year in review, I think it was there. Yeah, 35. My question is, I was just looking into next week's agenda for general purpose and the Truth and Reconciliation policy. My question is, in what way, because here it says that we identified the artifacts, are we at all looking ways for repatriation of those objects, or if the makers, the community that they came from, want them back, or is that part of the artifact collection program right now, or would that come later with the Truth and Reconciliation policy?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, this would be, what was done last year is a first step in the process. This allows us to provide a list upon request. We have had one request, and so we've provided that list and have not had a follow-up on that. So this better enables us to start the process of repatriation. And I think as we go forward in the conversations with First Nations, we'll learn better on how we can facilitate that process in a way that works for the First Nations peoples that, whose belongings we may have under our care.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you. Carol?
Thank you very much to the chair. Great report, great video. Appreciate that. COVID was difficult for everybody, but I noticed that we had the take-home kits, you know, for arts and crafts for kids. Now that COVID is over, can we keep doing that? Because it just seems like a great way to reach out even beyond the events that we host.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, we plan to continue doing that. They were hugely popular with many wait lists and continue to be as we're rolling them out this year as well.
All right, something good that came of COVID anyhow. Thank you.
Andy?
Thank you, through the chair. Well, thanks very much for the report and the video. It was very entertaining, the video, and lots of great information in the report too. You know, some of the numbers were quite astounding considering we're coming out of COVID. So with, you know, over 85,000 people, for instance, visiting Britannia, is that getting somewhat close to pre-COVID numbers, or do we know that?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, overall, we're still about 40% below what the 2019 numbers were. And it's definitely mixed depending on the site or the event and the circumstances of each of those. So in some cases, we've had increases, but those are few. In many cases, we're still working to rebuild that visitation back to what it was, in particular in relation to sites that depend heavily on tourism.
Right, well, that's good to hear. And just a little shout out, I think, based on the video and the report to London Farm in particular. I know the master plan we've talked about before, but some of the improvements there, I know the board is extremely happy with the progress that's been made, and city staff are a huge part of making that happen. So Farm Day starting up again, for instance, was a big success this year, brought in a lot of people. Maritime Festival mentioned in the video, a lot of people coming into that. The one thing I'm going to have to follow up with archives is the pilot's license for the women, or for the female pilot from 1958, because my Aunt Isabel lived in Richmond then and she was a pilot, so I'm going to have to follow up and see, because there weren't too many female pilots and at that time, so that one really intrigued me a lot. So thanks a lot, that was a great report, thank you.
Move the recommendation.
Move. Seconded. No, I just want to add that this is a good report, and I'm also delighted about the progress we are making in updating those information on the 188 Indigenous artifacts. I think this is a good thing for the understanding of our history and also for Truth and Reconciliation initiatives. So, any further questions? Seeing none, so I call question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Number 3, 2023 Neighborhood Celebration Grants Allocation.
I have nothing further to add to the report. I do want to introduce what's a familiar face to many of you. Dee Boley-Cowan is the program manager of events, so we'll be helping to coordinate the rollout of this program, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have so many applications and we're able to give out so much money. Michael.
Thank you. Just one question. I know we didn't get all the details of all the applicants, so they all seem like great projects, the ones approved. And my only question is about one of the ones not recommended for funding. It's on our page 59. There was 9, I guess. And the bottom one, last one, 79 was the question. And if I go back first to the grant program, under eligible project expenses, one of the bullets there was artist fees. So when I looked at that last one, that the neighborhood group wanted to do cleaning, prepping, painting, I assumed that was artist fees. But maybe the issue was that the retaining wall they wanted to do it on was not their retaining wall. Is that the issue?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, really the primary purpose of this program is to drive community events and community celebrations. So some of the ones that were successful would have artists that would be engaging in more of an event style of activity. So with all of the ones that were rejected, what we do try to do is to direct them to an alternate funding source so that they've been directed to our mural program, because that would be a better avenue to seek funding for that project.
Wonderful, thank you.
Carol?
You know, this is one of my favorite things that we do in the city, and I remember when we had the major events committee, and we just scaled down a lot of the really big mega events, but we made sure that not only did we maintain the neighborhood grant allocations, but we increased the numbers. So I was just thrilled to pieces to see that you dug a little bit of extra money up from last year's budget. So thank you for your hard work. I'm sure it was really hard to go through all the applications, but the fact that 67 grants out of 76 applications, that's a very impressive number. So thank you for your hard work.
Laura?
Thank you. Thank you through the chair. Just echoing the same comments from Councillor Day. It's just so impressive to read all the different groups that receive funding. As a community member, I've applied with groups for these before and received them before, and it's my first time on council actually seeing a list of how many people are doing events around our city together for community building, and it's really just tremendous. So thank you so much.
What was the recommendation?
Move.
Second.
I just want to ask a question. Now, we have 76 applications this year. How did we compare to last year? And again, among those 76 applications, how many of them were returning applicants?
Yes, so in 2022, we had 105 applications, and 61 of those were met the eligibility criteria. This year, we had fewer applicants, 76 applicants, but 67 of them met the eligibility criteria. And of the applicants this year, we had 33 that were returning from last year.
Okay, very good, good balance. So any further discussions? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor, opposed, motion carry. Item number 4, Langsang Major Park and Open Space Guiding Principle and Next Steps. So do we have any highlights?
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. This report in front of you is to present solely the guiding principles of the Lansdowne Major Park and Open Space Development. Currently, we are in phase 1 of the 3-phase Lansdowne Major Park and Open Space Master Plan process. Actual design of the park master plan has not yet begun. Should the committee endorse the report today, it will proceed to the next council meeting for council's endorsement of the guiding principles as outlined in this report. These guiding principles will inform the upcoming development of the park master plan concept options in phase 2 of the project, during which time a wide range of stakeholder and community consultation, as well as citywide public engagement, will be conducted to seek public input. For context, attachment 5 of the report presents only a series of diagrams illustrating the intended phasing of the entire Lansdowne Shopping Center redevelopment project, highlighting the park components as previously supported by Council as part of the related OCP and CCAP Amendment Bylaw 10154 in 2021. Staff is happy to answer any questions by the committee.
Bill?
Yeah, just a number of questions. Where are the guiding principles? Are these the park elements?
Through the chair.
66.
Those are so the words are the guiding principle.
That is correct.
Okay. I guess my question here, where was the workshop in phase 1? Was that a staff workshop? Or is council going to go to a workshop on this part?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the workshop was with staff.
With
in
staff?
phase one. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess the master plan concept and then phase two is with staff. So council doesn't have a comment. I've got a couple of questions. If we don't like the layout, the principles I have no problem with, they're just words. They don't mean anything to me, but the layout does, and what the city is getting. Can we change it?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the layout and size of the open space as shown in the attachment of this report has been supported through the OCP CCAP amendment. So I might call on my planning colleagues to answer that question about whether there are opportunities to change that.
Okay.
Okay, through the chair to Councillor McNulty. We did secure, through the OCP amendment process, the obligation to provide to the city 10 acres of major park space. The shape and the orientation of that space is as attached in the report, and it is made up of 4 key elements. In addition, the OCP amendment secures an obligation for a minimum of 2 acres of additional public space secured through rights of ways.
Right, I know what you wrote. I want to change my mind. As we're developing along the way, I want to change my mind. Times have changed. As long as we go along, if I approve this, this is all Richmond will get for the next 10 or 15 years. And to me, I think it has to be an ongoing thing. And to be quite frank with you, I have looked at the linear park, for example. On the north side, there's no green space. The buildings are right up to the edge. It's going to look like you know what on Alderbridge. You know, it slipped by us, and I thought at one time, to be honest with you, we were going to have an opportunity to have further input into it from a council point of view, okay? And yeah, it's great. They made an offer to us. But like I said, I've changed my mind. When I start looking at what they've put forward now that I see what they have, wow. In my opinion, the city's getting very little. It's like over at the Oval with a hotel, et cetera, we're going to get the use of 56 parking spots, but we get 0 for it. So my question is, can we change it? If council has that desire. I may be all by myself here, but that's okay. I've been there before.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, what you have before you is consistent with the OCP amendment, which is sitting at third reading. Following adoption of the OCP amendment, there still would be individual rezoning applications that would be required to be brought forward for council for consideration. Staff assessment of those rezoning applications will be whether it complies with the OCP that is before you today. However, as with any rezoning application, ultimately the consideration of that rezoning application will be subject to council's consideration in a public hearing. So in terms of changes, I would say that that is possible through the rezoning process. Having said that, the park layout before you does comply with the OCP amendment. It also is consistent with the city's development cost bylaw, which does identify this amount of park being provided in this location.
Okay, thank you for that. But I think that needs to be put into the report. And the reason I come up with it at this stage is when I look at the linear park, for example, the developer has to do that anyhow. He's really given us nothing, in my opinion. And there's nothing on the other 3 sides in terms of green space, at least on my diagram on page 70. So I guess my question is, I'd rather lay it out now and be able to say, hey, this may not be the final draft. You know, I think the developers, to be quite frank with you, are quite cocky. They think that this is a slam dunk and this is all they need to give us. This is me speaking now, not you, okay? And in my opinion, it is not a slam dunk. I may not be on council, but I may not be here in 2027, 2028, when that council hears, and they come back and say, well, look what those people did in 2023. They did nothing, and we're stuck with it. And so that's where I come, Mr. Chairman, to staff. So the principles, as I say, great. They're words, they don't mean anything. The diagram on page 70 is I'm not going to support yet, because I think we need to go, I'd like to see staff go back and look for more green space around the edges. If the only green space we're going to have is on the south side with a couple concrete plazas, et cetera, and that massive development that's going to take part there, I'm sorry, from my perspective, it's poor planning. And it's a poor decision from my perspective, okay, that I'm making. I'm not criticizing you, I'm saying me, okay, because I have now an opportunity to express my point of view. But I will support what you've done in terms of the perspectives, but I want it very clear when the first development comes forward, if it comes forward before the end of the term, I'm going to ask for more. And not only in park, I'm going to ask for more in housing, or else I'm just going to continue. I'm going to vote against everything from here on in. So you can't pacify me. I'm sorry. Okay.
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, not trying to pacify you, but I just did want to highlight further on page 70. While you are correct, the majority of the park spaces are to the one side. There are a number of different either lineal connections, greenways, et cetera, that do run between the development. So just wanted to highlight that for you.
No, I appreciate it. I'm not criticizing the work that's been done. It's just I'm making a public statement of where I stand as a councillor who has a vote. And I'm going to let you know where I'm going. And I'm not just going to accept it. And it's not just this development coming forward now. From my perspective, we're at a very critical stage in this community. And unless we demand more, we're not going to get anything. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, staff, for the opportunity to vent, but do not count on my support on these things, because I'm going to be vicious in terms of getting something for this community before it goes to a basket.
Well, I'm sure you're not the only one who has concerns.
Okay, well, I'd love to hear it. Please speak up.
Yeah,
Don't be silent.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, for a few questions. First one, I guess, page 72, it's the suggested by the highest number of people. And the biggest one at the top is public washrooms. So how many public washrooms will be part of this?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that is yet to be determined, so no details on the amenities or programming for the park spaces have been determined. As part of the second phase of the process, we'll be looking for stakeholder, community, and public input on what the program and amenities will be for those spaces.
Okay, on the opposite page, thank you, is page 71. Under key input, this is at the top, it says feedback on draft guiding principles. So I assume this is about what we're voting on in this phase here. The third bullet for key input, it says incorporation of regeneration in relation to ecological restoration. Could you explain what that means? I'm familiar with all the terms, but how does it relate to what we're seeing in front of us? Because as far as I can tell, they're wiping the slate clean and putting in all new stuff.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, so yes, that was input specifically on the guiding principles. So that input was incorporated primarily through the fourth guiding principle, which is imagine and build the future. The second principle, which is regenerative, where a well-integrated and resilient ecological network contributes to social and environmental regeneration. So again, through future phases of the process, we will be if the principles are endorsed, we would be using that as a guiding principle for the design of the public open spaces. So looking for opportunities for adding trees, stormwater retention, just to name a few, support for pollinators, additional habitat, just as some examples.
So that's the next phase. Phase 2 is when we'll see that.
Correct.
Tough to move this ahead to that without having it confirmed. My last question then relates to well, I thought there was kind of the 4 guiding principles, there was one you mentioned, the regenerative bullet for Imagine, and then there was the ecological resilience for the Thrive. And I was just trying to kind of relate this to some of our existing strategies which were mentioned in the report. And one such open space and parks strategy, it's not, we don't call it guiding principle, I can't remember what we call it, but it's integrate ecosystem services. So things like food production, water purification, clean air, protecting biodiversity. I know nothing is, all we got right now are these shades of green and competing uses that are going to be for these spaces, and something like large venue, gathering space, open space, that it's tough to compete with that because that can accommodate the largest value for the largest number of people. Where people who are in the 30th floor, I don't know if they're going that high, of one of these units who just need some quiet time, wants to connect with nature, there's nowhere to go. And if you look at the map, which says how far you got to walk to get to any place, it's going to be plus 5-minute walk to get to the middle arm of the river. So people with accessibility challenges would want something on site. And it's not confirmed that anything will be on site that involves somewhat of like an inland wetland habitat. Even our own language in our strategy, the open space park strategy, says that with rapid population growth and development, obvious with this proposal, our parks and open space have an increasingly vital role to play in providing ecosystem services. And I just don't know, or I'm not comfortable that there's going to be any of that here, other than the token tree planting and grass. So can you confirm anything beyond what we're sitting right now?
Through to the chair to Councillor Wolf, we would be exploring those opportunities again in the second phase of design, focused on design and balancing all of those competing interests. And then we would bring the final master concept plan to council for consideration. So there are opportunities for additional council input on actual more detailed design.
Also, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I think you've pointed out right. The key of this phase really is to set the principles, because in future phases, we're expecting to develop multiple plans and options. How to evaluate those options would be as away from being subjective as possible. And so to evaluate on an unbiased lens, how do we do that? Is to go through with these guiding principles, as well as the open space, parks and open strategies, et cetera, that we have previously developed, to make sure that the options in the future master plan would maximize these opportunities according to the guiding principle. That's why we want to get the endorsement now, so that we can move forward to the next phase.
Great, thanks. Just a comment then to finish up for me. Yeah, I appreciate that. I know this is a real challenging project. It's coming in phases. It's all getting worked in different times, and I didn't support this project when it came through planning because of the types of housing that is coming with it. But I do have confidence in the parks' approach to the space that we're discussing today, because I have seen other proposals come to this committee, and we've asked for changes, and staff have supported those additions or modifications, or moving the dog park or getting it out of there. or saving more mature trees. Unfortunately, there's really nothing that'll be saved and protected from this. It's all gonna be fresh, so we really have to put in, or get the developer to put in that kind of speed up the maturing of what they put in, so it's not just stuff that will get trampled by other high-use activities in the green spaces, so. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Laura?
Thank you, through the chair. Just to kind of go piggyback onto what Councillor Wolf was talking about with the mature trees. That, with existing trees, I should say, that's, I'm just looking at the page 70. So on Alderbridge Way, all along Alderbridge Way currently, there's mature trees on the sloped bark mulchy edge of that parking lot. Are they all being removed? And is that for any particular reason?
Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, whether or not those trees are retained or removed will be brought forward as part of the rezoning through each parcel that fronts Alderbridge. So that's more part of the detailed design.
Great, so it's not a given that they're gone then, as Councillor Wolf was sort of just indicating.
Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, no, that has not been determined yet.
That's great to hear, because it's a huge asset to already have a whole row of mature trees. I could see how on the Lansdowne side, that if they're going to convert that into that long linear park, that they might have to remove the trees on that side, but I wouldn't see why they'd have to on the Alderbridge side. I have a question for, I guess, Mr. Craig probably, just regarding the, you can try it, but just regarding the OCP amendment. So when we had questions about can we change this, can we add things, we're not getting enough. The response was that this is all consistent with the OCP. So if it's, just because it's consistent with the OCP, I'm just wondering how many details are included in the OCP, because the OCP is very general. So for example, it might, the OCP, says they must provide 10 acres of park, but definitely doesn't specify how many trees, what type of park amenities, anything like that. So we could ask for more. At later stages then, like during each phase of rezoning, perhaps?
Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, in terms of the details of how many trees, yes, that would be determined through the future phases of this project, as well as through the rezoning applications for each parcel.
Okay. And then a question about the roads when it comes to the OCP. So I see that Cooney is going to be going all the way through the park, through Lansdowne development now, whereas before it didn't go through. So it's essentially creating a new road. And then also Hazelbridge Way is going all the way through and creating a new road. Are those things that are required by the OCP as well, or are they just consistent with the OCP, or is it some sort of a requirement based on the amount of density that's going to go in there? And is there a possibility to only have one of those roads going through if that was desired?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, in terms of the OCP amendment, it establishes the broad framework for the redevelopment of the site. The individual rezoning applications will get into detailed design of each of those properties. Landscaping will be dealt with through the development permits, which would follow rezoning. In terms of the road pattern shown in this, it is consistent with the city center transportation plan. It is also consistent with the existing city center area plan. It was revised as part of the OCP amendment that was brought forward in 2021. Generally speaking, these roads are required to provide access to the future development parcels, not only in terms of vehicle access for the residents, but also the larger overall city's transportation network. The road system will be augmented or supplemented by a series of pedestrian mews that will run north-south and east-west to encourage alternative forms of travel. In addition to that, the OCP amendment secures 2 mobility hubs, which are intended to transition between transit and walking and cycling to encourage a culture of walking and cycling throughout this site. As I believe was pointed out earlier, the majority of the site is within an 8-minute walk of the Canada Line station. So generally, I guess in terms of your question, the extension of Hazelbridge, Cooney are identified in the OCP, the city's development cost charge program, the city's transportation plan. The detailed design would be further refined as part of individual rezoning applications. And in terms of alternative modes, there would be dedicated cycling infrastructure included on Number 3 Road and Cooney as well.
Okay, thank you. And then as I was just looking at how the linear park kind of stops and then there's a big road separating it from the central park to have some sort of consistency from park to park. Perhaps there could be like overpasses over those roads where the park users could go over instead of having to sit at a crosswalk, stuff like that. So when would something like that come up?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, in terms of detailed designs of the cross sections, those would be dealt with as part of the rezoning applications. There is no question that those intersection improvements, especially along the Lansdowne Linear Park, will need to be carefully designed to promote walking and to ensure that they are safe and encourage those modes of travel. In terms of elevated walkways, I would say that that is something beyond what is currently being contemplated for those intersections. Not to say that it isn't something that could be accommodated in the future, but it is not something that is currently contemplated.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question, please, Chair. Looking at PRCS 74 and onward, for each phase, it mentions, so this is each phase of development. It says the number of parking stalls lost and then the number of parking stalls provided. So for each one we're losing, I'm guessing that's, for example, the first phase, 1351 parking spots. That's the outdoor mall parking. And then because of the amount of density that's going to be built above that, then in the underground parkade, we're going to gain 1,900 spots. Is that right? Or is this parking outside that it's referring to? I just didn't understand in each phase the increase of the parking that, I'm assuming that would be underground?
Diana, do you know where those numbers come from?
And on PRCS 75, see it says parking calculations, number of stalls lost 332, number of stalls provided required 1,600.
Yes, so through the chair to Councillor Glanders, these are all excerpts from the OCP amendment report and the projections based on the land uses and the building forms that they were studying in order to develop the master plan for the site. One of the things they had to consider is how much parking is required for continued interim operations of the mall. So in many ways, the desire to maintain commercial uses on the site, as the site was incrementally being redeveloped, did influence the phasing pattern.
So it doesn't have to do with the permanent units that'll be there for the residential, it has to do with parking stalls added to that spot to continue functioning of the mall traffic while other phases are being constructed?
So through the chair to Councillor Glanders, it's a calculation of how many stalls they project will be required for the residential and commercial new development, as well as consideration of how many stalls will remain for the portion of the mall that will continue operations. So there's equilibrium there.
And since this OCP amendment, do we do a change to our parking minimums regarding the increased bike parking and whatnot, or they could get, what was it, if we do more lemur units, you could live with less parking? And has that been since the OCP amendment? And so are they aware, the developers, of those new provisions that they could reduce the parking?
So through the chair to Councillor Glanders, these are your worst case scenarios. We wanted to ensure that we could facilitate, and absolutely the developer would be very interested in the reductions related to TDM measures.
Great. That answers all my questions. Thank you.
Good. Carol?
Thank you very much. I think what we're hearing loud and clear is we don't want to repeat of Richmond Center, whereby a previous council approved the development and we couldn't get more rental housing. We couldn't get more affordable housing because it was already pre-approved. Am I correct in assuming that we're not doing that in the Lansdowne location? Sorry, Wayne.
Don't go away.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, you are correct. With respect to Richmond Center, that site had existing zoning. They are simply redeveloping consistent with their zoning. With the Lansdowne redevelopment, the intent was to proceed with a OCP amendment, which would lay out the larger framework for the redevelopment of the site. Individual rezoning applications will be considered in keeping with council policy of the day.
Yeah, as we change and they change. Perfect, that's good to know. So do we know at build-out what kind of population we're looking at being in that entire Lansdowne Mall redevelopment? I know that's a really tough question to answer, but do you have any round numbers?
Through the chair, the OCP amendment envisions approximately 3.8 million square feet of residential development and 690,000 square feet of commercial development. Using a conservative estimate of 750 square feet per residential unit, you're looking at approximately 5,000 units on the site. I would say the population would be 2.2 per unit as an average, so around 10,000 people.
Well over 10,000 people. Yeah, wow. Like I said, Richmond Center used to be the center of Richmond, and with this new redevelopment over there, which, I certainly didn't support, it's not going to be the Richmond Center anymore. Lansdowne's going to be the center of Richmond because of the SkyTrain, because of its proximity to Garden City Lands, and just the fact that it's going to allow for some open space, which we're not getting at Richmond Center. So all I can say is we have to get this right. This one's really important because this will be the center of Richmond. So then I'm looking at again, everyone refers to page number 70, and I'm looking at the Center Park and event space. With over 10,000 people, have we considered working with the school district to create at least a primary school? I mean, you don't want to be busing kids from kindergarten to grade 3 or 4, but when they get older, it's possible to bus them to another location. So is there any plans in place to allow for a primary school, like say kindergarten to grade 3?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, as part of the OCP amendment, there was detailed discussion with the school board. The OCP amendment did identify potential school sites on this property adjacent to some of the park spaces. Development of a school, however, would require that the school board acquire those sites from the property owner. The school board continues to be in contact with the property owner. We are keeping them aware of the development progress. So long and short, there are opportunities to locate a school on the site. Acquisition and construction would be a school board responsibility.
Yeah, well, we're going to be meeting with the school board very soon, and I think this should be top of mind. While I understand that it's expensive to buy land in the middle of a shopping mall, there's other land that they own that could be traded. And I think that that's something we need to get really creative about on this location. Otherwise, we're going to have kids in kindergarten on school buses, and that's not acceptable to me. So the roads. I'm looking at the roads again on page 70. And what this design has done is cut this into 6 pie pieces, basically. I understand the north-south road of Cooney and Hazelbridge, but I do not understand why we would need an east-west road, because all of the buildings would have access to those north-south roads. So what possible reason could we have to take up so much valuable space on that east-west road?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, again, not being the director of transportation, all I would be able to say is that road was identified as part of the city center transportation plan. It is part of the integral network of establishing multiple travel options throughout the site.
So this is going to go to council next week. We can have further discussion on it, and transportation can answer those questions at that time. And if council members are unhappy with the configuration, we could potentially vote against these guiding principles at that time. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, in terms of voting against the guiding principles, that is a council decision. I would, however, point out that the road pattern is, again, consistent with the OCP amendment application, which is sitting at third reading following a public hearing, and making changes to that would not be appropriate.
Okay, we'll
May I
have to look
clarify
at what's going to happen there.
Just one thing to add through the chair to Councillor Day. The diagram on page 70 is not part of the current referral, so it's not attached to the guiding principles.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I think, as I mentioned earlier, Councillor Menotti is not the only person who have questions and concerns about the whole project and its development. And I think, we all agree that this is such an important project in terms of the scale and the number of units being built, things like that. So I think we have to do it right. But today, I think we're talking about the guiding principles, the concepts, and many questions being raised about details. I have questions too, of course, I always say that probably I don't want the linear park just being a beautified sidewalk. It's to be a park, right? Not just a sidewalk with more plants. So my feeling is that we need to have some platform that we can talk about all these ideas before we move forward. So I noticed that staff's recommendation is that, number one, we endorse the concepts. I think that may not be a problem. The concepts are good. I think it's only when we translate those concepts into concrete plans, then I think we have all kinds of questions. So staff say that, recommend that we endorse the concepts. And then giving the permission to move on to phase 2. Now, I'd like to add that perhaps, we need number 3. Before we move actually into phase 2 to develop the master plan concept options, would it be possible that with a workshop, really, I don't want staff to waste your time and then you go too deep into your concept plans and coming back to us and we say, no, this is not good enough. Refer back and then going back and forth for different rounds. So I would suggest that maybe we have a number 3, which is have a staff council workshop before, you go too deep into the phase 2
Make it a staff workshop, not council.
Yeah, a staff workshop, yeah, okay.
Certainly a staff workshop with council for the park master plan during phase 2, even in the early stage of phase 2 is totally welcome. At the same time, I just do want to clarify this is not to endorse a concept with this report. This report simply is to outline the guiding principles.
Right.
Whether we have a lot of questions about the development related to this area, whatever forms of the roads, etc., these guiding principles for the park can continue to apply. So your endorsement of the guiding principle today doesn't affect all these other questions that you have.
Elizabeth?
To the chair, I just wonder if staff could take that under advisement in terms of having a workshop. I'm not sure about the process for that, but we would be happy to accommodate a workshop with you. I'll leave it at that.
So do I have a move out?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Speakers.
Okay, good. So now we would like to have delegations.
Mark a little faster. Come on, squeeze it.
Okay,
Come on.
Mr. Dunphy, your name?
Thank you, Councillor Rao. My name is Evan Dunphy. I live at 6655 Linus Lane. I'm very encouraged by the conversation I've heard today. It was very nice sitting there and hearing this stuff. I haven't sent you anything on this yet because I'm still formulating my thoughts, but I will send something to council, or to committee and council. I'm really encouraged by what I heard today, and some of the stuff is beyond the scope of these guiding principles, and I would implore you to, refer a separate motion to staff at some point, probably at council, to relook at the OCP, because as we know, OCPs can be amended, and so just keep that in mind. But today we're talking about these guiding principles, and what you decide today, as you just heard from staff, will be how they apply anything that comes forward through that scope of what you approve today or don't approve today. So I want to paint a little picture before I really drive my point home. So I want you to imagine it's 2050. The final phase of this development has just finished because it's a big development. It's going to take decades to finish. We have, as we just heard, 10,000 residents living in here, thousands of workers who come in on the bus, on the SkyTrain, drive in to work in the commercial areas. We have hundreds of thousands of visitors who come every year to eat, shop, dine, all that stuff in here. You have the Lulu Island Park that is this brand new, amazing park. It's one of the best parks in all of Metro Vancouver. It's a stone's throw away. You have this linear park that's connecting the Garden City lands to Lulu Island Park. As Councillor Day said, it is the city center. It is smack dab in the middle of everything. You have, in this vision, 2050, we've double-tracked the SkyTrain, so we got higher SkyTrain capacity. We have a rapid bus running from Richmond to Metrotown in 30 minutes, from Richmond to Surrey, the new biggest city in Metro Vancouver, the center of Metro Vancouver, right there, right at your footstep. What we have, as we mentioned, the school, the long-range facilities plan identifies Lansdowne as a potential school site in the future. So in this vision, let's pretend like we got that, and we got a school right there. We have, hundreds of thousands of visitors, as I said, hop on the SkyTrain from the airport, 10 minutes there at Lansdowne. What do we want 2050 Richmond to look like? You look at cities across the world and what they're trying to do right now at their downtowns. They're trying to downsize. They're trying to give road diets, to give more space to people and less space to cars. And you look at this park that is flanked on all sides by 18 lanes of traffic, something like that, some ridiculous amount of traffic going through here. You have a linear park that should be this amazing active transportation lane that takes you from the gem that is Garden City Lands over to Lulu Island Park. That linear parkway should be the most gorgeous ride you could possibly do in the city. And you're gonna be stopping every 100 meters to let cars go by on 6 lanes of traffic. I really, really, really want to see more space given to people. You look at the Park to Plaza connector, this high street, it's gonna be shopping and retail and connect that little park in the southwest corner with the development. That's gonna be one of the best parts of this project. This pedestrian-friendly zone, and it's tiny. It's one of the smallest parts that's dedicated to that space. Let's give more space to people and less space to cars. Let's find a way to give this plan a little road diet so that we can dedicate more of this open space to to people. So when you're looking at these guiding principles, one thing that I suggest that you do is add on a guiding principle that we want to prioritize space for moving people first and foremost. That could be a guiding principle of how we deal with this open space. Otherwise, I'm just really happy with what I've heard today from committee members. So I just want you to remember that this is the future we're planning for, 2050. This is all built out. It's not necessarily, I'm sorry to say this, it might not be for you. It's going to be for your children and your children's children. And what kind of city are they going to get to grow up in? Imagine the opportunity that other cities would kill for to have 2 million square feet in their smack dab in their city center to develop from scratch, and what they would do with that opportunity and seize that opportunity to do something really, really special here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Good. Okay, Laura?
Thank you, Mr. Dunphy, for presenting. I just have one question. Because we don't have the rapid buses yet, and we don't have as much SkyTrain capacity yet, and traffic in the city center is a huge issue at the moment. I can see, we get complaints all the time that we haven't built enough new roads for what development we're doing because people can't get from one side to the other. Have any of these great cities or developing these great blocks have had roads through before that then they decommission and turn into? Because I'm just thinking, if we can't not have the roads now, and let's say specifically the east-west one, it's in our transportation network and it's a no-go and we have to put that in. And then in 20 years down the road, we really don't need it anymore and we've reduced our vehicles. Could we not decommission it and turn it into a nicer thing later?
Sure, but you could, and cities have done that. You look at Barcelona and their super blocks, and you still have, cars are still welcomed into those blocks. they just share that space with everybody, so they're not prioritized. So if you live in there, you can still drive in there. You have a little special pass. Bollard goes down. You're allowed to come in and access your home. But the expectation is that you share that space with everyone. So you're driving 10 kilometers an hour, maybe. You know, that's one thing I really like. You look at any townhome development where the private interest, the people that live there, get to choose the speed limits.
There's more like a driveway.
And
there,
have you
right?
ever gone into a townhome where they say 30K an hour speed limit? No, they all say slow down, children playing 10 kilometers an hour, 15 kilometers an hour, because they share that space with everybody. And so certainly you could have roads that would share that space. But also I would just say that we should plan now for the future we want, right? We have this amazing opportunity. Currently there's no roads there, right? No one's driving through Lansdowne currently to get to where they're needing to go. So yes, people are upset with their ability to get around in the current situation, but we're not taking away an option that currently exists either.
Nope.
So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Carol?
I actually wanted to speak to Councillor Galander's comment, and I think that has happened in major cities where roads have been closed for pedestrians. And like in Denmark, where my family's from, they actually have the roads open for pedestrians, walking streets they call them. And then at night, they have deliveries and whatnot that can be made with delivery trucks, because everything's closed anyhow, all the shops and restaurants. So, I mean, it can work both ways. And I think having that flexible plan is definitely doable. So, thank you.
Good, so, I would like to move the motion, a three-part motion, 1, 2, and the third part would be a staff workshop regarding the phase 2 concept developments. Staff workshop.
Could I?
I want to put it in a motion because I think we need to have a record of something like this, otherwise, 10 years down the road, nobody can remember that we have a workshop or, there was something like that. So that's why I want to have to have the workshop as being part of the motion.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Could it be that staff conduct the workshop prior to implementing phase 2?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Before we go any further, let's have that workshop. Yes. And not that we're opposed to phase 2, but we need it now.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Not later.
Yep.
Okay, all right. I would second that.
Okay, we'll second it. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So manager's report. Only good news stories.
Good evening. Yes. I hope everybody's fingernails are clean after planting. The city recently wrapped up the Earth Week celebrations across Richmond. This citywide event provided free environmentally focused programs to Richmond residents. This year, over 24 Earth Week programs were offered with more than 676 residents and community members participating. 10 community partners collaborated with city staff to offer these programs, including many of our community associations. Programs which were offered included composting demonstrations, gardening and bee workshops, invasive plant pulls, upcycling and recycling programs, and tree planting. A few highlights from programming this past week include 43 cubic meters, that is the equivalent of 266 bathtubs, very large bathtubs, of invasive Himalayan blackberry were removed from a park space, from many park spaces. A complete Earth Week education experience, including nature observations, upcycled make and take crafts, and cleanup kit creations hosted by the Thompson Community Association, which saw over 80 families in attendance. And finally, the planting of the first mini forest on public property in Western Canada, which brought together over 60 volunteers, multiple community partners, and different levels of government to plant 743 trees, shrubs, and perennials over a 3-hour period at Terra Nova Park. Finally, staff estimate that over 1,500 volunteer hours were spent engaging with and enhancing Richmond's rich environment through this year's suite of city-led Earth Week events. Staff will be sharing photographs and video footage of the event on city social media channels and the city's website.
Good job, good. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update. It was very exciting to hear about all the tree planting. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it, but I would have liked to have been there. And I'm also always supportive of removing invasive plants. The last time that green team removed Himalayan blackberry, it was at the end of nesting season last September. And I'm just curious, do you, just removing a lot of greenery, shrubs at this time of year, there can be hummingbird nests that are very, very, very small. Do you know if the blackberries were checked for nests before removing them?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, it is standard protocol for bird surveys to be completed prior to any work in parks during the nesting season.
Wonderful. And also, queen bumblebees will hibernate in areas where they know there's food in the spring and summer. Are there going to be any, so there may be many bumblebee colonies starting in the area this spring. Are there going to be replacement pollinator plants that will be in bloom this summer that will replace the blackberry flowers?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, the types of plants that were planted in any of the events this past week at Earth Week, as well as any planting project that we do with volunteers, predominantly includes the feeding, the plant species that are visited by any of 50-plus native bumblebees in British Columbia.
Awesome. Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you. Just one question about all the bathtub worth of blackberry that was removed from our parks. Was it just cut and removed, or did we actually get the roots?
It's my understanding, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it's my understanding that the areas were cleared, and to the extent that we could, we pulled out the roots.
Okay, because that's been the biggest issue. And follow up, any of that removed from the nature park, the Richmond Nature Park blackberries that are becoming a major problem inside there?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the project was primarily focused, from my understanding, at Terra Nova Park.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. Any further? Okay. Remember, only good news stories.
I have a couple updates for you tonight. First of all, the Richmond Museum is once again organizing the Richmond Regional Heritage Fair with 7 schools participating. Students will be setting up their projects Thursday evening, May 11th, and then judging will take place Friday, May 12th. If counselors are interested in stopping by for a visit, Friday would be appropriate at any time, and we would welcome your visitation, as I know the students do as well, and are always honored to see a counselor come by. Secondly, we will be supporting the Steveston Japanese Canadian Cultural Center to install a display about Steveston Nikkei history entitled Contributing to a Diverse and Multicultural Canada, which will be going into the Galleria here in City Hall in honor of Asian Heritage Month and should be installed early next week. And we are planning to share that message with public to hopefully bring more people in to learn more about how the Steveston Japanese community has contributed to that community's development. And for those of you who attended Salmon Festival last year, you will recognize that display as it was presented at the Japanese Cultural Center at that time.
Thank you. Any questions? Laura?
Thank you. Could you just quickly repeat where and when that event was on Friday, where a counselor could come by and see the students?
Absolutely. Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, it's at the Richmond Cultural Center.
At what time?
I believe it's happening throughout the day.
On Friday.
On
This
Friday, yes. So students will be setting up with their projects. So I will have details of it, but I understand that it's similar to a school day because this is part of what they're doing for their schools. So I will be providing further details in a memo.
Thanks. Just one more question. The the Salmon Festival, is it going to have a parade this year? Because I know we talked about what a success it was last year without a parade, but I actually have been hearing from a lot of people from the public that they really hope that the parade is coming back.
Through your worship, Councillor Gillanders, yes, a parade is being planned.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Only good news.
All good news, all good news.
Okay, any further managers report?
Sorry, just a point of clarification. The Heritage Fair is May 12th, and we will be providing details via memo.
Great.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, through the chair to the committee. BC Youth Week is fast approaching, and Richmond has a fun-filled week of activities planned throughout the city to celebrate from May 1st to May 7th. Highlights from the week include a scavenger hunt, a t-shirt design contest, and a movie night. And the week will be capped off with the UROC, Richmond Outstanding Community Youth Awards, on Thursday, May 4th, to celebrate the achievements and dedication of Richmond youth. A full list of Youth Week activities will be posted on the city's website, and they will be promoted on social media, at community services facilities, and through a news release to the local media. Thank you.
Good. Okay. No more reports?
Overjoyed.
Oh, Carol, you want your phone
I
thing?
just had a question of staff. I'm still getting emails about Pajos. Will there be a public announcement about the vendor that's coming in, what they're going to be called, what they're going to be serving, and when they expect to open?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we are just finalizing the final details, and you should be hearing something very soon.
Will you be making a public announcement? Or?
Yes, there will be a news release coming out.
Perfect, great, thank you. That would save a lot of emails to council.
Okay, so with them,
We're adjourned.
a motion to adjourn, so now we are adjourned. Okay.